Okay, so we're on a 10-minute limit for the screencast, so I'm going to try to wrap the rest of this chapter up in less than another 10 minutes to keep you from having to find multiple videos. So where we just left off previously was talking about sketchbooks, and this particular item that we're looking at here is one of Da Vinci's with text accompanied by drawings. In this case, just an interesting fact is that Da Vinci wrote backwards to try to keep other people from stealing his ideas. So we'll talk more about Da Vinci when we get to the Renaissance chapter, as well as Michelangelo, but let's go ahead and touch base on these famous artists and take a look at some of their sketches. Now, think for a second as you look at this Libyan Sibyl. This is one of Michelangelo's studies for the Sistine Chapel, one of the 80 fresco paintings that he completed of the biblical narratives, one of which, like you see in front of you, is the Libyan Sibyl. Now, think for a minute, is this a receptive or projective drawing? Is this something he's having to look at and study and replicate on paper? Or is this something that he's directly taking from his own imagination? Okay, so hopefully you came to the conclusion that this is a receptive drawing. Much of figure drawing is simply receptive. It is the learning and being able to practice and translate the perception of human anatomy in an accurate way onto paper. Now, of course, there's a lot more to do with that, such as proportions, and we could talk more about shading and one-point perspective and all of those different terms that we discussed in chapter 4, as far as how to duplicate an object that you're looking at onto paper, specifically the human figure. But overall, this is receptive. This is what Michelangelo saw, and especially back in the Renaissance, in the day and age where the human figure was a popular topic. Especially, personally, I took one figure drawing class and then one figure sculpting class, and we always had to have live human models. As awkward as that maybe was sometimes, it was the most realistic way to receive the vision, the shadows, the subtle musculature or angles of the human body in different positions in order to translate those accurately into a drawing or a painting or a sculpture. So drawing, like I said, is such a foundational process, just like in many other artists. We've already mentioned Van Gogh last chapter. Here's his bedroom at Arles. So you can see his preliminary sketch versus his final painting. And by the way, I forgot to refer to Da Vinci as well as Del Toro's sketches in the book on page 97. And if you flip on over to page 99, you can see some of Van Gogh's sketches as well of the carpenter and the old man with his head in his hands. Now, interestingly enough, if you read about the Van Gogh highlight on page 100, you'll see that he originally thought of himself as not being an artist, as not having the capability to draw very well. But he quotes, and I thought I had this highlighted in my book, but I know it's somewhere on this page. He says something to the effect of, if you can only master one drawing, or if you can complete one successful drawing that you feel confident about, that you feel is an accurate representation of what you saw, then you can be an artist. You have that confidence and capability as an artist from there on out, and hence that was the beginning of his career as an artist. Now, we already talked about Picasso. We looked at the Guernica painting in response to, I believe it was chapter 4, Art for Communication, where he was responding to the atrocities of war, the Spanish Civil War, which he witnessed and was a part of in his hometown in 1937. So in this particular case, you can see the first initial, very rudimentary, very rough sketch in the upper left-hand corner, as you can refer to in your book on page 102. And then you can find the second stage where it's a little bit more detailed, some shading, a little bit more definition as far as what particular characters are what. Are they human? Is it a bull? Is it an abstract head? Is it a child? And then you see the final part of that process at the bottom of page 102 in his final painting called Guernica. So the process is really interesting to see. And of course, the process is often part of the product, which is why drawing is such a foundational tool. But does that mean that drawing itself cannot be a work of art? No. Of course, a drawing in itself can be a final, completed work of art. So that's one of the purposes of drawing. Of course, another purpose is that the practice or the process in perfecting a final product, whether you're learning how to draw a human, a flower, whatever it is you're trying to draw. And of course, we can draw things just to simply record or notate an idea with no intention to make it a final drawing, or even oftentimes, as many sketches within a sketchbook are, maybe it's just a drawing to get out an idea or to make a memory of something. And of course, this day and age where we have cameras ready to go on our telephones, of course, we're more inclined to take pictures of things for memories or to record something that we saw. So sketching is slowly becoming almost an obsolete idea. So here's just a few examples of how drawing can be a preliminary idea like we saw just a moment ago. And then let's move on to talking about the difference between dry and wet media. So if you look in your book on page 103, the particular drawing tools that your book mentions that are dry, obviously because there's no liquid involved, are things like pencils, charcoal, crayons, pastels. And you can see the many examples in your textbook as well as the ones here in the PowerPoint. And then, of course, obviously, drawing with liquid media is just like drawing with pen and ink. So anything that involves a liquid, if you're writing notes right now with a pen, you're using liquid media. If you're writing right now with a number 2 graphite pencil, you're obviously using dry media. Now, gouache is another type of liquid media, but what happens when we talk about gouache is we slowly approach this technique crossing the line over into painting. So I would like to actually skip over that for a little while, but I want to show you some fabulous examples. Again, another Van Gogh. Pen on paper, this is ink wash as well. So oftentimes artists would use paint brushes as a pen. And if you think about it, a pen and ink are sort of like a paintbrush. Think back in the day when people had to use the quill of a feather to apply ink to write a letter. So it's kind of the basic techniques. You're just applying that liquid ink to a piece of paper. Now, as an elementary art teacher, and I know I'm really limited on time here as we finish up, I wanted to just share with you, and this is not in your textbook, but this just simply is a mini how to draw lesson. After years of working with young children, and of course, in my experiences, combinations of my experiences through K-12 as well as in college, multiple drawing classes and different teachers, different approaches, different techniques. What I would say are the best approaches for learning how to draw are the 3 that I've listed here. The first is simply drawing with shapes and forms. So a lot of this is going to deal with what kind of personality type maybe that you are. So what's going to work easier for you. If you can visualize the object you're trying to draw as a set of shapes, say for instance, it's a puppy dog. If you can see the ovals and the rectangles and the triangles, if you can break that figure down into a series of shapes, then you can usually duplicate the general outline of that object on a sheet of paper, and then all it takes is just simply a matter of embellishing with details. Now, some people that doesn't really work the best, and a lot of times it's going to depend on what it is you're drawing too. So another approach that I found to be pretty successful with the majority